Hello, lecture laners. Ever wondered what the sine, cos, or tan button did on your calculator? Well, today it's time to find out. So I bet you're wondering, what is trigonometry? Well, trigonometry is a study of triangles, the relationship between their sides and their angles. For right-angled triangles, there exist certain relationships between the sides. First of all, we need to name each of the sides. So let's choose a certain angle of our right-angled triangle. Here, let's say this is what we call theta, which is a Greek symbol meaning angle in mathematics. So if this angle is theta, then the side that is opposite that angle, hence being this side, we're going to call the opposite side. The longer side of the triangle, which is the diagonal side, we always call the hypotenuse. And lastly, the third side is known as the adjacent side. Now, although there are technically two sides adjacent to theta, we always say that the adjacent side is the one that is not the longest side. So the longest side is the hypotenuse. So now that we've determined what sides of our triangle are what are sine, cos, and tan? Well, sine theta is equal to the ratio of the opposite to the hypotenuse. So what that basically means is if we took the sine of theta, that would be equal to the opposite over the hypotenuse. Now we'll go into a little bit more on that later. The next we have is cos theta. Now cos theta, that's equal to the adjacent side over the hypotenuse. And the last one is tan. And tan theta is equal to the opposite over the adjacent. Now I bet you're wondering, how do I memorize that? What can I do to memorize these things? Well, luckily there's a nice little acronym so that you'll never have to forget. It's called SOHCAHTOA. So how you write that down, if you ever want to remember that, is SOHCAHTOA. And what that basically means is sine, opposite hypotenuse, cos, adjacent hypotenuse, tan, opposite adjacent. So as you can see, they pair up into threes. Now I bet you're asking, well, how do I memorize this? Well, I personally just remember SOHCAHTOA. But if you want to use a mnemonic, you can. An example of mnemonic would be some old horse caught another horse taking oats away. That would be one example. Another one could be silly old Henry caught Albert hugging two old aunts. Alright, let's start by trying to identify sine, cos, and tan on a triangle we know. Let's say we have the triangle 10, 6, and 8, with theta in the bottom left-hand corner. Well, the first thing we need to do is figure out what 10, 6, and 8 actually are in reference to our angle. So 10 is the longest side, so that is the hypotenuse. The 6, well, that's opposite our angle, so it's opposite. And the 8 is adjacent. So it is adjacent to our angle, but not the hypotenuse. Now, as we said before, our little acronym is SOHCAHTOA. So what that really means is, if we want to know what sine theta is, well, sine theta will be equal to the opposite over the hypotenuse. Now, in this case, the opposite is 6 over the hypotenuse, which is 10. So that is what sine theta equals. Next, we have cos theta. And that's equal to the adjacent over the hypotenuse. So that will be 8 over 10. And lastly, we have tan theta. And that's going to be equal to opposite over adjacent, which is 6 over 8. That is the basics to finding out what sine, cos, and tan actually are. Now let's put that into some problems. So let's apply this trigonometry to some right angle triangle questions. So let's say we have the triangle where this side is 5. We are told that this angle here is 30 degrees, and we don't know what this side is. Well, first of all, let's write down our SOHCAHTOA. So we've got SOHCAHTOA. Well, our first step is always to identify. And what I mean by that is we need to figure out what sides are important in this triangle. And that would be the 5 and the x. Now the 5 is in the opposite spot, as it is opposite the 30-degree angle. Now the x, that is in the hypotenuse spot, because it is on the longest side of the triangle. Not the adjacent, although it is adjacent to 30 degrees, the adjacent side is never the longest side. So after we've identified what sides are important, the next thing we've got to do is figure out if it's a sine, cos, or tan question. Well, because we've got the opposite and the hypotenuse, that must mean that it's a SO question, because SO has both an O and a H in it. Therefore, this must be a sine question. So the next thing is figuring out if it's sine, cos, or tan. In this case, it is a sine question. So therefore, sine of whatever our angle is, which is in this case 30 degrees, is equal to the opposite, which is 5, over our hypotenuse, which is x. If we rearrange that, we will get that x is equal to 5 over sine 30 degrees. And if we put that into our calculator, we're going to find that x is equal to 10. So therefore, the hypotenuse length is 10. Alright, let's look at another question. Let's say now we have the triangle where we have this side length is 3. We know that this is 22 degrees, and we don't know what this side length is. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is write out my SOHCAHTOA rules. And next I'm going to label what is what. Well, I know that this is going to be adjacent, because it's not the longest side, but it is next to the angle, so it's an adjacent side. This x, well, it's in the opposite side, because it is opposite the angle of interest. Now, if it's opposite and adjacent, which one of the 3 trigonometric functions will be used? Sine, cos, or tan? You guessed it, it'll be tan, because tan has opposite and adjacent in the question. So, TOA. So therefore, we're going to write out that tan of theta, which is 22 degrees, is equal to the opposite, which is x, over the adjacent, which is 3. So the good thing about SOHCAHTOA is it's in order. It tells you tan, opposite, adjacent. So tan equals opposite over adjacent. Rearranging this, we will get that x equals 3 tan 22 degrees, And then putting that in the calculator will give us that x is equal to 1.21. Okay, now I bet you're wondering, well, what if we have two sides and it asks us to find the angle instead? Well, luckily we can do that too. Let's say we have the triangle where this is theta, and we know 5 and 3. Well, again, we're going to write out SOHCAHTOA. We're going to identify the sides. This is the hypotenuse. This is our adjacent side. So if it's a hypotenuse and an adjacent, which one of the following SOHCAHTOA is it? It'll be ka. So that means that cos theta equals adjacent over hypotenuse, which will be 3 over 5. Now to reverse this process, because we can't put cos 3 over 5 in the calculator because it won't be the correct solution. To reverse the cos theta to just get theta as the subject, we need to hit the shift button on our calculator, and that'll make cos to the minus 1 appear. So cos to the minus 1 of 3 over 5 is what you must press to reverse the cos function over the theta. And what that should give you is 53.13 degrees. Now, if you do get an answer where theta isn't a 2-digit number, then I would double check if you shifted correctly, if you did shift cos. Because otherwise, it may not be correct. So always make sure that you do shift on your calculator before finding an angle. Okay, here's some practice questions for you to do, and I'll leave the answers in the description. Alright, I hope that helps you with your basic trigonometry. I'll catch you in the next video. Please like and subscribe.